Good evening and welcome to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Mississippi, my hometown. Mississippi is just a town. The state consists of less than 3 million people. That's half of the people that are in Chicago alone. You know, when I was in Chicago, I was very, very nervous because every time I turned around, I bumped into somebody. Here in Mississippi, I can go for days and days and days and not see a single soul. I can go in the woods in Mississippi and stay down there for months and nobody would even know I was there. We have territories and areas that no man has ever gone still in Mississippi. You know, I once told you that my experience navigating up the mighty Pearl River, that I saw some things there that was hard for me to imagine. I saw tents, I saw homes in trees, I saw big kettles, I saw rebel flags, I saw all of the things that were very frightening to an African American male traveling along on the Pearl River. If you want to go up through there, you'll see some things from yesteryear, some things that'll bring back memories of how it must have been the first time we landed there on Plymouth Rock. It is just that, I don't want to call it backwards, but it is just that different, and you have to see it to believe it. Now, as always, you know, if you're watching our program on Facebook, then we want you to share this program with your friends and family. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to go on and subscribe to the program. If you're watching us on WeBelieveDigital.com, and I want to send a shout out to GoDaddy. They finally got our website back up and running, and we look forward to its utilization. You know, on our website, we're not just a page, but we are in fact a platform. Our goal is to one day become the Black CNN, and we've even played with the nomenclature. CNN, the Colored News Network. That's right. We intend to move right up there in their footprints. We know it can be done. We all remember Ted Turner when he started out there in Atlanta, and the young man there that was the anchor, Bernard Shaw, was there all day by himself, trying to tell about news going on in the city and around the world. So here at We Believe Digital, we are no different. Doc and I are the Bernard Shaws of today. And we're going to do a better job of bringing you current events and events that affect your lives all across the world. So it's important that you support this network. We Believe Digital. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and our very own platform, We Believe Digital. All social media, we have a presence on it, and we are also engaged in content management, social media management for other firms. So we're growing in numerous ways, in lots of directions. We know that we can pull this off and one day be looked upon as the premier network. Now, we realize that other channels have had some difficulties. The Black News Channel, don't want to say it fell, but it no longer is in existence. It was bought by Byron, the black billionaire. You know his last name. And so I'm sure that he's looking at the revenue and the dollars and the need for that kind of a service that Black News Channel was trying to put forth. But we intend to get it done here with We Believe Digital. Now, one thing we realize, and we want everyone else out there to realize, is that black media is important. It's tremendously important to correcting some things in our history, preserving some things that have been lost. to bring new information to the discussion that has never been talked about before, to talk about the real history of America and in particularly of African Americans and black folk across this continent and across this world. We are there. You know, my co-host has said that African Americans have been in every continent from the beginning of time. Doris Lewis, who was on the program with us tonight, has said the archaeologists have shown that when you do the DNA, black folk were there. And I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt about that at all. I wouldn't be even surprised as I watch the space exploration where we finally, after 50 years, landed again on the moon in our efforts to get to Mars. I wouldn't be surprised if when we get there that black people are not already there. It wouldn't shock me at all. But we're going to get right into our program. Remember to support us in every way that you can. It's critically important. Now, Doc, this is the last week of Black History Month, and as always, I want to make certain that our viewers and our listeners out there know that Dr. Eldridge Henderson was born on a plantation in Mississippi. I don't make this up. We're talking about Black History Month, and we're going to talk about Haiti. We're going to talk about Brazil. We're going to talk about Africa. We're going to talk about the Middle East. But this man was born on a plantation in the Mississippi Delta. And so we're sitting next to history in itself. I always say that someone must have laid him in a basket and put him in the river just so that he could survive. But he's here with us tonight as Dr. Eldridge Henderson. How have you been, sir?
I've been fine, sir. But I want to straighten you out.
Straighten me out.
I want to straighten you out. You're talking about, and you're going to be putting emphasis on it tonight, about black people and the problems they have, and now you want to say that this is the last week of black history. That is not the way it's going to be with me. I celebrate black history 12 months of the year. Now, I know the white folks have 11 months, but we are going to have to celebrate 12 months. We're going to give away this 1 month and add 11 more to it, and we will have 12. Any black person that's saying we are not going to celebrate black history year long ought to be put out of the church. They ought to think about praying and trying to get some kind of internal salvation so they can love and respect themselves and their people. And at the same time, they need to strategize on how they're going to do better so they can be prepared for what's going to happen to them on December the 31st, 2029.
Doc, we're going to come back to December 31st, 2029, because you have given us a deadline. But let's bring on our other co-host at this point in time. She's been with us enough times now to earn her stripes, and we are glad to have her as always. Doris, if you're there, I want you to tell our viewers all over the world a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this with you and Doc. And what I've been up to, what I'm up to every day, trying to do something to empower black people. I try to stay on top of everything that's going on in this country and around the world as much as I can that's related to black people. So, as I said last week, I'm a native of Jackson, Mississippi. I grew up in Jackson, went to elementary, high school, and college there. And then I left in 1975, but I would come back home every 3 or 4 times a year because Jackson gave me my foundation. I'm what I am today because of the people in Jackson, Mississippi, the community that I grew up in, which is West Jackson, where Jackson State is located. So Jackson is very, very dear to my heart, dear to my spirit, and I will always do whatever I can to make Jackson the Jackson that I grew up in, this vibrant city, wonderful black men, women, and children, educators, laborers. We had everything we needed to have in order for us to do what we did during that time, and we've got to go back and pick up that blueprint and start all over again.
Well, Doris, let's get right into it, Doc. There's a difference between African American history and black history. What is that difference?
Well, black history, as we call it, is used to be called Negro history, where the Europeans decided what the narrative would be for black folks. And of course, they started black history or Negro history with slavery, with the period on slavery to the current. And when many of them in various states put those so-called black museums together, they did the same thing. They didn't start early enough where blacks would have some pride in themselves as human beings and as citizens throughout the world. Most of the time, we have talked about slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and other things, and the records show, Mr. Socrates, that black people only had 11 years of semi-peace in America where they had the full right to vote, and during that time, they were catching so much hell when they were in government positions of responsibility, and that's on the local level, state level, regional level, U.S. senators and so forth, sheriffs, superintendents of education. But they didn't have to do nothing but struggle for 11 years. They were being killed, hanged, all kinds of things. And after 1877, from 1868 to 1877, blacks only had that period to grow and be considered independent voting Americans that had a real opportunity to help fashion the laws in the South. I said the South, not America, totally.
Well, let's talk about that. Doris, let's talk about the black struggle in Haiti, and let's talk about the black struggle in Brazil, and let's talk about the black struggle in Africa, and why is it that we haven't been able to build a dynasty, to build an empire commensurate with the great America, the great China, even Russia, and those countries have done so much more. Why is it that we haven't been able to overcome?
Well, because of racism, and when we were brought out of Africa, Brazil, the largest percentage of black people that came from Africa landed in Brazil. Now, what Brazil did not go through that we went through here in America was chattel slavery. But Brazil experienced, black Brazilians experienced the same racism, the same poverty, the same everything that we experience here in this country. Now, right after Reconstruction, there were like 60 towns we built in America, but ultimately they were destroyed. You know, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, and a lot of others. They were prosperous little towns and cities, but they were stored because there was economic development in those communities, and the white establishment in this country just did not want to see us in that position. So every time they saw us rise up and become successful, they did everything they could to destroy these towns, which they did. And after Reconstruction, because of Reconstruction, that's when the Jim Crow era came in, the segregation, the Ku Klux Klan, all these terrorist groups that organized and attacked the black communities throughout the South. So it is because of racism around this world that we have not been able to do like Russia and China and other countries. And also because of the leadership, especially for the last 60, 65 years, the black leadership that we've had, and I've said consistently, and I'll continue to say, we just don't have they don't have the vision, and they don't have a plan for black people. They're on everybody's agenda, but an agenda for us. And we have the resources, we have the knowledge, we have the people who can do that. But we've just got to put the right people in place to come up with this plan that we continue to talk about. It can be done. We can still do it.
Doc, you hand me a document that says that blacks don't own the hood. They just live there. What do you mean?
Well, it's very simple. If you remember during the civil rights era when blacks were burning places down, they always made an effort to hurt themselves more than they helped themselves. The black folks would get mad when a police officer killed a black person in their community, and they would burn it down, all the stores in the area, and think they were doing something great. They were very proud. You would see them having wonderful times, burning places down, stealing televisions and other things, and talking about what they have done against the white folks in America, and talking about we going to give them what they deserve. But black folks didn't understand that they were putting themselves deeper into racism and control by doing that, and that impacted us up until the day. Now, if you go to those communities that black folks burned down, you will find that they are still not repaired. You will find many of them just still underpopulated. The buildings are worse than they were because many of them are burned down. Others have been lived in by homeless people and caused all kind of problems. The city government have not moved in there and rehabbed those areas, and blacks are now sitting up in those places, locked in. All the companies left that made them make that good job and the wage-paying jobs that they were able to get during that period before they burned the hood down. That's where a lot of the motor companies had their manufacturing plants, paint companies, steel companies, and others. And blacks during that period, in the late 60s, 70s through the 90s, had good jobs in the inner city, and those that wanted to work in many cities could join unions and send their kids and grandchildren to college for the first time without suffering economically. Now, since that period, things have gotten worse. So they burned the homes down, destroyed the factories, and then the European Americans and others moved out of those areas because they were forced out and say, we are going to not rebuild their so-called homes. We are not going to put our factories back here. And they are doing the same thing the French and British and Europeans did in Haiti when they burned that place down and took over, but they used a different strategy. They decided we're going to take it over, rebuild, we're going to be the rulers in this new country, and we are going to dominate.
Let me ask you, Doris, is it unnatural for an oppressed people to destroy their own property and homes and buildings? If you don't have the strength to attack the energy, is it pretty normal for you to tear up your own stuff?
Well, when the 1968 riots occurred in Chicago, in particular, where a lot of the looting and the burning of buildings and other things, it was Madison Street. Blacks did not own anything. Those buildings, those businesses were owned by everybody else. Now, after they burned that area down, they did not do any reinvestment. But what you have today there, you have mostly Arabs all up and down Madison Street. And most of the buildings were owned by white Jews. And so today, many of those Arabs, the buildings that they don't own, they are still renting from the Jews who owned all that property that was burned down during the 60s. So black people didn't own those buildings in that area. They were consumers, they were shoppers, but they didn't own anything. So it's just beginning to come back, but they haven't really. It's not like it used to be. It's still suffering.
Now, I remember back in the days when Angela Davis out on the West Coast and Huey Newton and Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown, when H. Rap Brown would go from city to city and declare burn, baby, burn. I knew that he was protesting the way that blacks were being treated, and the only weapon that he saw that he had was to set something on fire, Doc. And so he said, burn, baby, burn. Was that a mistake? Or
of course, it was a mistake. If you're going to burn something, you burn the property of the people that's actually causing you some problems where they live. The good example is if the people in Ukraine would actually do like they are doing in Russia, I mean the Russians, they are coming to Ukraine and gradually taking control of that eastern part of the country. You can see the red line where they are gaining ground all the time. Now the Ukrainians not doing that. All they have to do is come up with a new strategy, because if they don't, they are going to be gradually forced out of their country and be locked into a part of it, and they're going to be like Hamas. Then the Russians are going to bomb them to death and take over that country without a doubt. So they are going to have to do the same thing and put insurgents in Russia, in the capital, and they are going to have to let Putin know that we have the problems solved by causing damage in your capital. They have to do like Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, Trump. They have to go and kill the leaders that's causing the problems. That is legal throughout the world on an international basis. Look how many people the American leaders killed during the last 25 years in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and they concentrated on leaders in those areas and their families. And they blew them up, including a lot of their property. And they were able to cut down on some of that activity, but they didn't win the war because they didn't go far enough.
Now, Doris, Doc is putting forth some facts and maybe some untruths in terms of a strategy of assassination of anybody that you are opposed to. I'm certain that some of that has occurred, but I don't think that black people who do not possess an army or do not possess an organization of any strength, don't own anything, can take on an aggressive event in someone else's neighborhood without just being totally obliterated and wiped out immediately, much like Hamas is being wiped out in Palestine. So I don't know if we can have a strategy that calls for us to take on our adversaries in such a direct way. What's your thoughts?
You know, when you're in a war, it's a war. And when you're in a war, you're trying to get rid of your enemy. You're trying to get rid of the force that's oppressing you. Let me go back to the 60s. In 1968, during the riots, we didn't burn down West Jackson. We didn't burn down our community because many of those houses were owned by us, so we didn't do that. As opposed to Chicago around Madison Street, where all the businesses were, black folks didn't own any of those businesses. Those businesses were owned by Jews. So they saw no value in it because they didn't own it. But when it comes to a war, you are fighting your enemy. So if it means going after the leadership of that force that's trying to destroy you, then you do that. During slavery time, we had people to poison slave masters. So there are a whole lot of different ways of attacking or killing your enemy. You don't necessarily have to have a gun. As I said, during slavery time, a lot of the slave masters were poisoned by enslaved blacks who worked in the big house. So, war, there's no kindness in war. When you're in war with a person or people, you're trying to stop them from doing what they're doing to you, to harm your family, to take your resources. So there is no set way of going after the opposing enemy in a war. So yes, I believe in going after anyone who's trying to harm us or trying to keep us from advancing economically.
I get you. Now, Doc, there are 56% of all African Americans live in the South. We are the majority in Jackson, Mississippi, and there are 60-some black mayors in the state of Mississippi. Now, we're not doing well there either, and so if we're in a war, we must be taking on a lot of friendly fire. You and I are both Vietnam veterans, and for those of you that don't understand friendly fire, that is when you're being shot and killed by people that are wearing the same uniform that you're in. And so in a situation where blacks are in the majority and that we have control over the government, etc., are we at war there as well?
Of course we are. You said the thing that is actual fact. You said we have control of the government. Anyone can be control of the government that's put there. But anyone that's not supposed to be there, according to the main rulers, are not going to have the two things they need: control of the government and control of the money that it takes to promote a good government. That's the situation blacks have throughout the South and the United States in the major cities. They don't control the money, actually saying how it's going to be spent. If they make any strong economic moves, the state legislature or the federal government of some big industrial tycoon is going to throw some kind of flattening episode in that situation, and blacks are not going to be able to do it because it has been historically designed for black people to not have any real power in America under any circumstances where it's going to impact something that's going to give them political and economic independence. It just has not happened other than in a few instances, and the Europeans were so concerned and upset there. Throughout history, you will find every time they destroyed those areas that blacks build, churches, homes, communities, businesses, even plantations. I remember when certain blacks would buy over 500 acres of land. They are semi-independent. They would go and build their own cotton gin. They would have their own corn mill, their own lumber company. And they didn't last very long. They usually were taken over, burned down, or they would go and borrow money on those things and couldn't pay it back, and they'd take it. And you know of some of those instances. And with that going on, they couldn't get a foothold. And then the leaders were told in person by a group and individuals, the solution is integration. So we want you all to become part of us. And anyone with just a little sense know for sure, Mr. Socrates, if you are controlling the means of production, the money, the appointments, and saying who is going to get the contracts, and I'm tired of saying it, you don't have any power. If you tell the leaders, now, if you're going to spend $10,000 or less, it all depends on who it is, you don't have to consult me. But if you spend $10,000 plus on any project, any kind of design in your community, you're going to have to come by me or come by my bank, and we'll see if we can help you. And then in most cases, and you know this to be a fact, you're not going to get, if you need $400,000 to do a project, they're going to give you $250,000. But if you had enough sense to have your own bank, you could go to those banks that you and your people control and get what you need to build your community, and you would have the power to spend the money that's going to make you stronger and independent. But people don't want to hear that.
Wow.
History shows, and then I'm going to be done. History shows currently that black people have access to all the money they need if they would spend it wisely. And the main thing they ought to spend it on is starting businesses and creating their own insurance company, banks, and investment companies. That's what it takes for survival in a capitalistic society. Make the money, control the money, and spend it for your own interests.
Wow.
In your own communities where you're in the majority. Just that simple.
Sounds pretty simple. We're up against a commercial break, and we want you to come back with us right after this commercial. We're going to talk about, James Meredith said that the black elite, that the black middle class was the greatest hindrance to progress that black folks had in this country. We're going to talk about that a little bit and see exactly where this opposition to black progress is really coming from and who's in charge of keeping things status quo or making them remain the way that they have always been. So stay with us, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Soccer here at ENT.com. is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into M.Dot grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome back to Doc and Sock, and with Doris on the line as well. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. Mississippi stays in the headlines more than any other state for all of the wrong reasons. Either we're having a water crisis, back during the February ice storm. Black folk went without water for over 60 days. That means that they could not bathe, they could not cook, they could not clean themselves properly because we were out of water. And we made the news each and every day, all to the point that finally the federal government stepped in and awarded $600 million to help Jackson fight its water crisis. So we are having some difficulties here in the capital city, but we're working our way through it. We get right out of a ice storm, then we go into a hurricane season, and then we see our small towns in the poorest part of our state, where 60% of the African American population is located in the 2nd Congressional District. The storm comes through and just wipes out Rolling Fork, just destroys the black town. And we look at the storms and the hurricanes when they come into New Orleans, it seems as if they just jump right on the 9th Ward where black people are. And we see black people on the roof, stranded, can't move, can't get out, drowning in a city. Because even if you give the notice to evacuate because a storm is coming, poor people can't evacuate because they don't have gas money in their cars. They don't have air in the tires. They don't have the necessities to be able to evacuate. So they have to stay and ride it out. Now, some white people ride it out as storm chasers, and some are just adventurous and want to do that. But for black people, it's more like a trap. And so it seems as if we are disproportionately receiving bad news in the African American community all of the time. It doesn't seem like nature is fair. It doesn't seem like mankind is fair. It doesn't seem like religion is fair when it comes to the plight and the condition of African Americans. And so I wonder, Doris, if we have done something wrong that has angered God and others for us to receive these blows that we're currently taking in.
No, I don't think that at all. If we are going to survive, we're going to have to come up with another strategy. We are going to have to take the money that we have access to, which is $1.3 trillion the last time I read. We are going to have to redirect that money to the black community. As Doc said, we're going to have to open up banks, savings and loans. We can do it. Religion is so corrupt. You look at the money that these ministers take in on Sundays. They put billions and billions of dollars in white banks every Monday. every Monday. So we're going to have to take our money and redirect it to the black community, and we can help those people who are not able to get out of New Orleans or wherever we are when a disaster occurs. We can do it, but we've got to stop listening to the way religion is taught. Religion has ruined us. It hasn't helped us because it's not taught the right way. No, I don't think we've done anything any more to God than anyone else. Who could do any more than the white man has done? But he's successful. He's thriving because he's using his money, his resources to build his communities, to take care of his families. We've got to redirect our way of thinking, our resources, and do for self. We can do it. I think we're insulting God because we're not doing it. We have the capability of doing it, but we've got to get these people out of the way, the politicians and the ministers who are stopping this progress. You gave an excellent analysis in terms of, being in the military and friendly, whatever you said, but it was an excellent analogy. We've got black politicians who are standing in the way of our survival, our progress. They're in these positions, but they're not doing anything for us.
Hold on a second there. Now, Doc, she says that our problem is solvable, that blacks can overcome and can build and can grow, even though she says that the current leadership is not helping us at all, that we got to rethink. I asked a simple question: did we think that God himself was angry at black people for whatever reason that caused for it to seem to me that we receive a disproportionate amount of the bad events when storms and tornadoes and things of that nature come? Now, it may be that we're just living in the wrong parts of the country, but it just seems to me that we're disproportionate. Blacks are disproportionately higher in prostate cancer, in obesity, in strokes. We are disproportionately suffering more than other races. So either somebody is angry with us, or we're just angry with ourselves.
No, see, that's what you all have wrong, Mr. Socrates. God told the people that you are responsible for the choices you make. I've trained you to control your destiny. You choose the right or wrong things to do. If you choose the right thing, where you look out for yourself first, your family second, and build your community through a collective effort, and if you use those resources you have and those talents, you will be able to have economic independence. Create your own schools. You're not excluding anyone else. Create your own factories, your own industrial parks, your own residential housing subdivisions. You've got to go and have your own mixed areas where housing and businesses are all put together, where you live on one side of town, you go across the street in the industrial places where you're working. You go down the road a little further to the industrial parks where the big manufacturing units are. And they're all within 5 or 10 miles. What blacks have done, they have always tried to follow the Europeans. And that's why America was saying basically that the middle class started most of these problems because they want to follow white folks. And you see, time they moved, they left their homes in their neighborhoods. The doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, and the businessmen all used to live together on the same street, in the same part of town. Many of them were doing well. They had their own homes. To give an example again, I want to talk about Jackson State, around Alcorn State University, and other places. Blacks own all kinds of property around Jackson State University. Even out in the country, in the woods, down in Northern Mississippi, blacks own land and a few businesses around Alcorn State University. But of course, as the years pass, their children were not trained to take over those areas. And they lost a lot of their homes and their land because they didn't pay taxes and many other reasons. So God has nothing to do with it. Man is the determinant of his destiny. He determines by the choices he makes or fails to make. You don't run away from things just because they are bad. That's when you pull your forces and your people together and start organizing and say, well, I'm not going to leave my neighborhood. I'm going to rebuild it. So when you get all your doctors and lawyers and your school teachers and your big-time preachers away from the ghetto where you were born and he or she were born, you find that your community is going to be diluted to the point where all the air is going to be taken out of it, and then the people are going to recoil themselves and start killing and eating up on each other and taking the few resources that are there. Now that's the history of the black folks and other poor people that are being forced into those areas. It is not good, and it's going to get worse.
Now, Doc, it would be nice if the black folks that have moved out of the city and moved in the suburbs with white people, it would be nice if they had stayed and helped build their community, but you can't blame a person for thinking that he is improving his quality of life by moving. He thinks that he's getting ahead. When blacks leave us, it's not that they don't want to be with us, they don't want to be in the conditions that we are living in our inner cities. And so just like we have issues with Tim Scott for standing with President Trump, but we also must say that a black man should have the ability to leave and go and do something different if he thinks that that's a better way.
But sometimes, if you look at the facts, it's not a better way. I made that mistake. I left my area when we left that Delta many years ago. I was down there in Hinds County, and we had things going pretty good for a while. We owned land, I've owned homes, paid for in the early 1970s. I made a mistake and moved from that area, went to several states. I bought homes, bought other property. You heard me say bought, but I didn't pay for anything cash. I had a large mortgage on 5 or 6 homes, owned some buildings, mortgage on that, had kids. They had cars before they turned 18. Nothing paid for cash. So I was working 2 or 3 jobs and going to school all at the same time. And if I had to remain in Hinds County, already had a home, already had some land, all I would have to do is buy another 50 acres here, another 100 acres adjoining that here, and the land was available in many places. It is today for sale. I made a mistake. That's why I returned to that area after 30 years. If I had stayed there, currently the Hendersons and others would have been owning 3,000 and 4,000 acres of land right now in Hinds County, Alabama, Georgia, instead of a home in a suburb that they're going to have to pay for till they die.
Wow. Now, we hear Dr. Henderson's analogy and his plea for blacks to come home and to help rebuild the inner cities, and he's saying that in the long run that you're going to be far better off than moving out there, taking on expensive mortgages in an area that people don't want you to be in.
And let me add something. When you get too many blacks out there, they're going to leave that area and turn that over to you. There's examples all over the world. See, most cities have what we call rings around it. First subdivision, second tier, more expensive homes, third tier, more expensive homes. And then that's when they left that city and started letting the companies and the businesses follow them. So whenever you find too many black people going to the first rim, second rim, white folks and Europeans said, well, we're going to have to go back to the inner city because it has fallen apart and we still own it, and we're going to rehab it, and I get tired of talking about it, and we're going to run these blacks out again. So what the blacks do then, they go to the next rim and buy another house for double the price. Then they have to go and try to find a job. And guess what? The big companies again going to move their jobs back to the inner cities where the Europeans and the Asians are. It's happening every day.
Wow.
And when you see a news article say, blank company has 3,000 jobs, they done located a job opportunity in Canton or Memphis, Tennessee. And that's not going to be in a predominantly black area. They avoid those areas at all costs. It's going to be in the area where a college or university exists where they can train their own people and throw a sprinkling of Hispanics and blacks there to pretend that they are being fair and equitable.
Doris, I noticed that these cities have these rings that Doc is talking about. In Jackson, we got 220. Atlanta, I guess you got 475. Chicago, I don't know what you got up there. But most of these cities, you can bypass the inner city altogether. I know that Mayor Harvey Johnson was opposed to the Clinton Byram Parkway right here in Jackson. Do you have a thought on why these bypasses are occurring?
Well, it's happening in Detroit. In fact, the governor of the state of Michigan was advertising and pleading for Asians to come back into Detroit. Not black folks, Asians. So it's already happening. I call it the 8% syndrome. White people are not going to stay when the percentage of black people grow. They are going to leave. Socrates, I use Jackson, Mississippi as an example when I'm talking to people. I grew up in West Jackson. You had doctors, lawyers, teachers, laborers, maids, janitors, all lived in the same community. And when integration came about, that's when we left, as Doc said. We started leaving those areas. And so the poor people stayed behind because they could not afford to leave. So you talk about building a middle class in Jackson. Well, the middle class cannot be afraid of those black people who are not on the same level that they are on economically or educationally. Because we have to help one another. The middle class can help bring those behind them up. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to reach back. That's what Dr. W.B. Du Bois talked about, the talented 10. The talented 10 were supposed to reach back and bring others behind them up. And we did not do that. We run from our people just like white people do. So what do you expect the results to be? They're going to be exactly what you see, what you have in Jackson now. 35, close to 40% of the people there who are poor. So why are we running? We're running from our own people. We're doing the same things that white people are doing. But if we want to survive, we have got to get rid of that nonsense. We've got to come up with a strategy for our survival. Because if the poor does not survive, the middle class is not going to survive either. So we need one another. So we have got to use our money and come back to these communities and build. Nobody's going to do that for us, nor should they. That's just preservation.
Well,
it's the first law of nature.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because there are all kinds of strategies. And Doc, I'm watching now the proliferation of charter schools. Now, is charter schools another strategy to remove the talent out of the black community? And if so, why is it that black legislators are supporting it?
Well, because they are smart people. They know these so-called public schools basically are miseducating the black students. If you do the research, you'll find 45 to 55% of black students that start school in kindergarten don't finish high school in some areas. 45 to 55%. But now if you had smaller charter schools in their areas where black people will organize them and train 200 or 300, in one school with their own trained teachers that they have gotten from these colleges and universities, you would have more people finishing school. But don't put all the emphasis on getting a high school diploma. I've been telling you all for years, everyone is not going to finish high school with a diploma. Everyone is not going to finish college. So you have to have what I call diversionary programs where you can give those students who's not going to finish high school and college a skill certificate in something in a special school that's been repurposed where they can get out at 17 or 18 and have a job making what we call a livable wage, 18 to 35 or $40 an hour. It's done in many European countries. We have done the research. Yeah,
Well-
everybody not going to college, everybody not going to finish high school, but the community organizations, the local leadership, got to make this happen.
Well, Doris, I don't believe that black folks are sponsoring charter schools. I believe that that is a strategy that the government has decided would work to further cause decay in African American communities. I might be misreading this, so help me out.
You know what? I am opposed to charter schools unless these charter schools are being run by black people. I am for public schools. Charter schools are only set up in predominantly black cities. In Chicago, charter schools all over. Charter schools do not do anything but help rich white men, hedge fund managers. They get a big tax break. I am for public education and quality public education. You put the same resources in public education in black schools that you're doing in white schools. The charter schools are not in white schools in suburban Oak Park and Evanston and Wilmette. They're not there. They're in Chicago. They were in Gary, Indiana, which is predominantly black, but they kicked them out. So I believe in public education, but I believe in quality public education, putting the resources in public neighborhood schools that they put in these white public schools in the suburban areas of Chicago and around this country. So I'm not a big fan of charter schools unless we are running them, and we are not. These are white. In Chicago, the charter schools are run mostly by white women, and they only accept students who are C students and above. And if you have any kind of social or emotional problems, they kick you out of those schools. They drain the best of the public school students into the charter schools in Chicago. So I am for public education, but quality public education, putting the resources and qualified people in these public schools.
Okay.
So it's by design that you have these charter schools in the black community.
All right. So we're almost out of time, Doc. My time flies.
Right.
And I want to run through just rapidly a series of things that are going on that I need quick responses from you and Doris.
Okay.
Medicaid expansion in Mississippi, one of only 10 states that have an expanded Medicaid, and it is being voted on tomorrow. Will it pass? Should it pass?
It should pass, should have been passed 10 years ago or longer, but there's going to be a lot of controversy there because if you pass it, there are going to be some major changes in the health of black and poor people in Mississippi. It is by design that black and poor need to stay poor, sick, miseducated, and they don't want that unless there's a reason from outside agitators that would make the governor and the legislature say it. And if to pass it is going to be so weak and the requirements are going to be so high and so much paperwork to get it, it's going to discourage a lot of people.
Doris, your thoughts on Medicaid expansion in Mississippi?
Absolutely, we need Medicaid. Mississippi needs quality health care, but as Doc just said, if it passes, it's going to be weak. They're going to bring everything else they can bring into it to try to destroy it because they want to kill poor people. This is a plan. The plan is to kill poor black people.
I am going to get with my pastor and ask him to help us with the fact that the plan is to kill poor black people. But we got to move on. There are garbage contract in Jackson, Mississippi. Waste Management had it for 35 years. They were not awarded the contract after a long and debate and legal things that went on to try to get the garbage contract to an African-American firm.
Well, they had it for 35 years. I just want to interrupt and tell you that they had it roughly about 35 years continuously. And there was time for others to put it in application to compete with them. And they did that, and they had better pricing.
Well, Doris, the mayor has...
So Richard got the contract? Richard got the contract?
Richard has an emergency contract. He currently operates...
Well, that's very revolutionary.
It is revolutionary, but the emergency contract expires at the end of next month, and the mayor has not put forth a recommendation for a permanent provider. And the city now is beginning to get a little bit concerned that we don't know who the provider for garbage collection is going to be in the city of Jackson. There's a local firm here that is one of two that responded to the request for proposals. And I believe that local trumps everything else when it comes to opportunities. What's your thought, Doc?
Well, it is. But let me tell you what the city council, I heard a guy say the other day that we don't know exactly what the mayor wants, but whatever he wants, we're going to have to take it to the citizens and see what they say. You know, doing well, the citizens don't have no say-so in government operation. They go to them with decisions already made. They just waste time and cause propaganda and mistrust, talking about what the citizens going to do. I've never seen the citizens do anything that's significant that the government doesn't want. That's a ram of shame.
We're going to keep our eyes on this garbage contract deal.
That's a
big
trick.
deal. Immigration. Recently, 2 of the immigrants were charged with the murder of a young lady, and it's causing some real issues on immigration. And the President Biden is on the border, and former President Trump is at the same location. We got dual press conference coming from the border on immigration. Doris, what is this immigration thing going to end up doing?
I think that young lady, the person that was killed was white, and that's the only reason that they're doing anything. Black people are going through hell in Chicago with these immigrants. They're threatening black women. They're showing up at homes of black women, single black women primarily, doing all kinds of intimidating things to try to run these people out of their homes, which is what they did in California. So the only reason Biden and Trump is saying anything because the person is white. Blacks are being attacked every day in Chicago by the immigrants.
She's still talking?
Doc, what's your thought on that, real quick?
Quickly. Well, this is a Trump Joe Biden deal, this immigration thing. Trump says all of these people want to come to America. I say I'm going to make America great again. I'm not going to let them come in. So he went down and negotiated with the president of Mexico and say all these people from these 13 different nations coming there, you just keep them in Mexico, because he knew that if he would let them come in, they would be criticizing him. And he knew that if they already in Mexico, when he gets out of office, Joe Biden going to let them in. So it's a conspiracy, and that's exactly the guards, Border Patrol, sitting right there, shaking their hand and pulling them on in, and very seldom do you see any real black ones coming through. You see one every now and then. When the black ones were coming through, they would beat them like hell with whips and sticks and riding horses, like they were doing to black folks during the civil rights era.
Wow. Israel versus the Palestine, this war, President Biden is asking for a ceasefire. He thinks that it can be reached. The goal is to stop the killing. What's your thoughts, Doris?
I could care less about what's going on in Israel, in Palestine, when black people have all the problems we have here in America. That's what the government of America needs to be doing. focusing on the problems that Black Americans have and passing some policies and executive orders to give us the resources to bring us out of the condition that we're in. We're giving billions of dollars to Israel. Israel gets more money than all of sub-Saharan Africa. So I could care less about that. It doesn't have anything to do with us. That's their fight over there. It's not here. It's over there, but they're using our tax dollars to keep Israel in power so they can continue to do what they're doing. That's not our fight, and we should not even be having a conversation about it.
I got you, Doris. I got you. Trump versus Biden is the Nikki Haley seems to be losing ground. Trump will be the nominee for the Republican Party. Biden seems to be losing ground. Are we looking at a Biden defeat?
It's very clear that it's possible, almost up to about 75% surety. Biden has put himself in a position where he's going to have more and more problems with his age and his memory and his communication ability. And he needs to put a plug in his ear, and when he is up there talking, he should have two things. That little screen that he can look at, and somebody talking to him to his earphone, telling him exactly what to say. When you get old and nervous, as I am, you might say anything. And if you're not the president of the United States, you can say anything. But if you're the president, you have to act with professionalism and authority.
I got you. Doris, should Black folks bail Biden out this time?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
not.
Wow.
Absolutely not.
Wow. Does that mean that blacks should?
I don't like Donald Trump, but I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because I think he'll get all of these illegal economic immigrants out of this country. That's going to destroy us as a people, Black people. It's one of the greatest threats that we're facing today. I don't care about Trump. He's no better than Biden. Biden's no better than Trump. But I'm voting for Trump, and I've voted for the Democratic Party all of my life. But Joe Biden opened the door for all of these illegal economic immigrants to come in here. That's one of the reasons why he's having a problem. He's having with the Black vote, especially me.
Now, our last question, and we're out of time. What do we want from the government, from a president? What is it that Black folks really need from our government?
They need the ability and the stamina and the foresight to demand something from the government for their support, whether it's Trump or Biden. For instance, the President of the United States, a lot of people know this, the President has the ability to appoint 4,500 people without congressional approval. Most of the big-time Black politicians know it. They need to tell Trump the same thing that I'm going to tell you they ought to tell Joe Biden. With 4,500 executive positions, that's not going to have to be approved by Congress. Black folks want 2,000. We want 2 more blacks on the Supreme Court. So we want to have at least another 50 federal judges in our community. And on and on and on. We want to have about 100 regional states employees that are paid by the federal government. That is directors of federal agencies. Give it to both candidates. And the one that can sign a secret document with the leaders that's saying this, they'll do it. That's who the blacks ought to vote for.
Same question, Doris. What is it that we want?
There are some of us who are in talks with Trump, and we have an agenda. I put together, a friend of mine and I put together an agenda for Chicago, an agenda for Black Chicago 2023. And what we were saying in that agenda is that Black people make up 30% of the population in Chicago. So in every governmental department, every agency in the city of Chicago, we want 30% of the policemen, the teachers, the firemen, and on down the line. Because when you hire people, then you can help people take care of their families. You can help communities grow. And that same plan can be used on the state and the national level all over this country. If black folks are 13 or 14% of the population of the United States of America, then give us 14% of the jobs across the board, the contracts across the board. So it's an agenda that can work. And we're not saying vote for Trump and not present some kind of agenda to him. No, you don't do that. You might as well stay with the Democratic Party if you're going to do that. But we should not be voting for anyone that we're not making any demands from them, like Doc just said. I agree with him 1,000%.
Okay, we're out of time. I know we got a lot more to cover and a lot to talk about. On Thursday, we're going to have Dennis Damer on as a guest on our show, Doc. He is the son of Vernon Damer that was murdered, shot down, killed during the Civil Rights Movement that we don't talk about enough.
While his sons were in the military. 4 of them, I believe, were at his funeral in their military uniform.
Wow.
Look at the old pictures.
He's going to be in the studio with us on Thursday. So we look forward to that. And the world needs to know this story about this giant of a man that was gunned down because of his activism and trying to help black folks be able to vote in Mississippi. Doc, your closing remarks.
Well, my closing remarks are very simple. I want people to understand that they are not considered any way other than a slave in America. And I don't mean a legal slave. You are a semi-legal slave. And I want you to understand that your time will pass about December the 31st, 2029, if you don't do some of the things I've been talking about. Pool your resources and talents. Control the areas where you're in majority. Started on the precinct level, then city, county, and state. And if you want to know really how to do it, you call us at 601-201-1957, and we'll come and tell you. Right now, we have 7 appointments in various areas that we will be going talking to people. We're not going to tell you where, but that's what we do, give you the real non-radio and television version, how you can do this on the local level, Mr. Socrates, without fanfare. You don't have to bark at anybody. You don't have to threaten to kill anybody, nor do you have to threaten to burn anything down. Just do it.
I got you. Doris, your closing remarks.
We need to start redirecting our money back to the black community. Reinvest in ourselves for our children. If we expect to survive, we've got to rethink what we're doing. Take our money and reinvest it in our communities. Demand that of your ministers. Demand that of your politicians, your social organizations. Reinvest in the black community.
Thank you. That's it for us tonight. Don't forget, on Thursday, we're going to have Dennis Damer in our studio. You don't want to miss that program. That family story is just one of triumph and tragedy that you do not want to miss. So join us then. Until then, we want you to stay safe and good evening.